Howdy, 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 and welcome to the Snort Cast. My name is Diana Nguyen. I am your host and I'm the creator of this show, and I would love to find out, where are you snorting from? There are so many snorters out there, and it's the reason why I created the show was to interview funny comedians, funny people from all around the world to talk about comedy and why and how they use comedy in their storytelling. Now, I want to know where you're watching from, because this show is all about you, and I want you to ask any questions you have about Candy, who is our guest for today. And before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. So tell us where you're watching from. Would love to know where you're snorting. And if this episode is supported by my Patreon community, thank you so much. You can check it out on the link there below. And just remember, tell us where you're watching from. And if you want to follow more of the SnortCast, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and on Facebook at Real Diana Nguyen or at the SnortCast. Now I am going to introduce my guest. This is our second time that we've done this because I love live. Live, you just go with the flow. So my guest is Candy Bowers, and before I say anything else about her, I will be showing you a clip of her work, but she is an extraordinary woman. She's powerful, she's strong, she's sexy, she's hot, and she's been a wonderful friend of mine. We've had many laughs and many very deep discussions about diversity, about Black Lives Matter, and about our art form in this world. She is a power source, and I'm so excited for you to meet her. Her name is Candy Bowers, and I'm just going to show you a short clip of her work because she is amazing. And as you can see, I am doing a lot of the IT now, and let's check out
Turmeric, seen here, can treat and even cure all human ailments and diseases, depending on what you have it in, a smoothie or this thing.
Wow, even depression.
Especially depression. Let's take a look at how that works.
Oh, great.
There's the turmeric. Yeah. So as you can see from this verified medical footage, the turmeric vaporizes the depression.
Right. That is so unbelievable. And I heard a rumour on this palm card that it can even cure cancer.
That is true.
Goodness, if only we'd known sooner. My dad could have kept his prostate where it was.
Yes, that's a shame. Now, let's see what happens when turmeric meets cancer.
Okay.
There it is again. All the way down. As you can see here, the turmeric smashes all the cancery bits.
Now, I'm the first person to admit that science is not my thing, unlike McCartney here, who fancies herself as a bit of a fake biologist.
Oh, well, I taught my cat to piss in the toilet, so.
Yeah, so feel free to go straight over my head and into hers. But how does the turmeric fight cancer exactly?
100%. So the turmeric sees the cancer cell and it goes pew, 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 pew.
And pew, 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 pew. Welcome to the show, Candy Bowers.
Hello. How are you? I'm in the corner.
It's amazing. I love your corner.
Thank you. Look down. the corner, searching for something. Yeah, how's it going in lockdown out there?
I know it's so for update for our community around the world, Melbourne, which is our hometown, is on stage 4 lockdown from yesterday. So we have a curfew.
Disaster. Emergency. That means they can just call it. They just called it. No time.
No time. There's no time to be wasted. So, Candy, can you tell us, who are you?
Who am I? I just want to Batwing. I just want to the whole time. I am a TV writer, a playwright come TV writer, and stand-up musical comedian. Most of my works had music in it. I've just started like the transition into screen. I dabbled, but now it's sort of my main bag. I got signed with a Hollywood screenwriting or literary agent last year in November, and I was planning on moving there in April, and it's like amazing to be. I mean, I feel like some people who were already in production, we're all at different stages, you know, if you were about to have a major life change this year. Crazy. And then I was thinking, what if it was last year, then I wouldn't even be where I am this year, you know, like there's so many variables. But my jam is, at the moment, I feel like I have a big sign on my head that says sexy and funny. So all the TV shows and the places that are I'm working with is sex and comedy. But my other love, of course, is young people and work for young people. I dream to write a musical Pixar and also a musical for teenagers for TV, like the next Pitch Perfect, I guess. I say like for TV now because everything's going to be on the TV. But yeah, my first feature has a little bit of interest around Hollywood, which is really exciting. So we're in lockdown and the world is shut down. But for writers, we can still manifest and dream and write at the very least.
So, Candy, if you had to write a book about your life, what would the title of the book be called?
Pure Rage. No. Ooh, that's a good question. Damn.
Yeah, isn't it?
Melt my pussy. No, I'm not sure. Diana. You know, my show is called Australian Booty. That's not bad because it kind of like links things together. But I don't know, something more radical would be fun.
Yeah.
Rad babes from the burbs. I don't know.
No, I like the first title. Yeah, the first title was good. I thought it was,
Pure.
That's it. Pure Rage is good.
Pure Rage.
Can I ask you, what was the first moment you did comedy as a child? Like the first memory of comedy. Do you remember that moment in time?
It's interesting because I loved musicals, which were really funny. So, and when you look back, I think you see everything I watched on TV was comedy. Lucille Ball was probably one of my first. Steve Martin was a favorite growing up. And then, of course, like, you know, what's his name, who played Willy Wonka? I was always really attracted. So I'm watching musicals, but I'm looking at the comedy artists. And then I think, I must have been about 12 or 13 when I first saw Whoopi Goldberg. And that was it. It was over, right? She was just everything and amazing. And she's such a important figure. And then now there's so many more for young people. But I think just really great cartoon comedy, like that all came from old vaudeville stuff. And I watched a lot of matinee movies and, you know, all the Shirley Temple movies. So I think Lucille Ball, though, was probably the first, but Whoopi was probably the most significant.
Wow. No, I totally heard you when you said Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
When she did Sister Act, she got me, man. And like, it was just like I was like 9 years old, and I said I was like pop. To our LinkedIn community and Facebook community watching, who is your favorite comedian and why? Tell us why. Candy and I are both in Melbourne at the moment, and we have viewers watching from India, Singapore, Portugal, Pakistan, Philippines, Michigan. Thank you for watching the show. Please tell us who is your favorite comedian and why. And we have Candy Bowers here talking about art and work, because she has worked all around the world. Candy and I, 3 years ago to this date, were performing in Edinburgh,
We were.
Scotland. You were my rock. You were my rock. We were.
Yeah,
I was a new.
You
What?
were. I was having a great time. I was being paid and housed really beautifully. I didn't have to think about anything. Producer, everyone. So I was just out there living my life, playing one of my favorite roles I've ever played, which was a pants role. I played Charles Penworth in Sisters Grimm's show, Lilith the Jungle Girl, which was all genderqueer and fun and funny and intense on the body because we were in goo. The whole show was in like pink, like Nickelodeon goo. So, yeah, but I had just a ball. Those guys really treated us so well. And I didn't have to think about all the hard stuff you usually have to think about in Edinburgh. And I thought, wow, isn't it amazing when you can just be right in your comic element? That's really fun. Because I studied at NIDA. I studied to be a classical actor, really. And comedy was always really interesting. Like you can't really teach comedy. You have to have a natural affinity for comedy. And in that way, I really did. And I didn't have a natural affinity for drama. Like even recently, I did an audition, like a screen test, and I had to be like this serious detective and do that. And then as soon as they went cut, I went, because I just can't, I just don't like it or something. Like I'm just a bit like, who wants that? You know, I don't want that.
And
It's sort of not my spirit. But yeah, it's been really interesting trying to carve a path in the Australian comedy scene because we still have such narrow sort of streams, which is what I loved about being in LA because it's so much bigger. It's a mecca, you know.
Yeah, and you were talking about that you were going to be in LA in April. Why were you going abroad for work and not fostering yourself here?
Well, I am 41, so I have done a fair amount of work here. And I just felt like I'd hit the roof, my head hit the roof a bit. And a mix of things, having done really well in Edinburgh over the years and having a connection with the UK. First of all, I was given an amazing opportunity to go to LA with Screen Australia and the Australian in Film Group created an initiative. And I was the recipient of the comedy initiative, which took me to ABC Disney Studios to work on Mixed-ish with Peter Sorgi. He was my mentor. So over a year, I got to speak to him and I really pushed it. Like, I think we were meant to connect like 4 times during the year and then meet in person. And we probably talked and chatted over a dozen times. And then I got to go onto set when I finally got to LA and see the whole show from the read all the way to the shooting, you know, pick the actors' brains, pick the writers' brains, just be around, which was incredible.
Yeah.
So what I tasted and what I saw was something I couldn't get here. That studio floor all the way through, there were Black women everywhere. Women of colour everywhere, from the stagehands to the writers to the executive officers. And I had never seen that in my life or been a part of a place where I was one of many women of colour and one of many Black women. There was like afros and braids for days. And the whole makeup department, everything was really super, on that Black excellence tips. And I was just like, this is the world I want to participate in. In Australia, I've always had to be in a leadership role. Before I even became a master, I had to be a mentor. Yeah. So over there, I could look up and see people in front of me. Whereas over here, I can't look up and see many people in front of me or any actual Black women from the African diaspora, let alone Blasian women, which is my specific background. Whereas over there, I was going to all over. There were queer folks, Latinx folks, Blasian, Black, Asian, South Asian, and they'd already done their climbs and they were already in those upper echelons, and it just felt, you know, that idea of you can't be what you can't see. I didn't realize how potent that is until I saw.
Yeah.
And I felt comfortable and I felt excited and I felt like I could pitch myself in a way that over here in Australia, I have to really white-splain and mansplain my comedy away almost. Because over there, it was just synergy. But not only that, what I'm really heartbroken about at the moment, it's really hitting me hard, is just going to yoga and having a Black instructor, or going to see a therapist, or being able to do, you know, a run challenge with other women of color, like that stuff. Being able to go to the shops and there being so many sizes on the racks, you know. Australia is just getting there, where we're seeing now people of color on Instagram, in Bonds commercials, all that. It's just happening now in the last sort of few years. And that's a long time to live without seeing yourself or bodies like your own, and that. So it's quite a dream when you go over there and you can just be a participant for a while or have a mentor, you know, which, yeah, was pretty exciting.
I totally hear you when you talk about you're kind of like endowed to be the master because no one else is doing it, and you're like this token of forging this jungle all the fucking time just to clear it so that you get visibility. And I totally hear the weight of it. It's not even joyous. There's no freedom artistry because you're constantly telling people, let me in. But I guess overseas, people are like, yeah, come on inside. Show me what you got.
In Australia, my voice is radical. Like when I talk about anti-racism or all of that stuff, it's radical. Whereas over there, it's normal. It's normal. And we've seen, you know, obviously over the pandemic and the last little bit, how important it is to see, you know, people of color across the board and what it's done when we're absent, you know. So that was also just a weight off, to be understood, to be fully understood, and to realize that I was also in demand, that my voice was really, really vital, age, voice, all of that. Whereas over here, I feel like there is a bit of, as they say, cosmetic surgery going on. So it's a little bit cosmetic, the diversity stuff going on. It's not deep. We're not seeing huge leadership shifts or like writer, actor, directors getting a shot, not just getting a shot, but creating an industry of success. So, you know, somebody wanted to ask about diversity in comedy, and I really feel like, at the moment in Australia, it's a little bit cosmetic. So, you know, there might be more people of color in supporting roles. But
20-second role on a show. Like I get a lot of 20-second roles because I fit that role for 20 seconds, but there's no development of a character for me to play with. That's
no investment.
No. Yeah.
Whereas, being in spaces where there's multitude of possibilities just sets my heart on fire. I felt like I got younger. I felt like I was rebirthed.
Oh, when you came back from LA, you were popping. Like I remember we bumped into each other. Remember in a shop store.
Reach on this, it was fun. It was just so much fun. And you know, I met all these people, and lots and lots of actors understand activism, understand politics, are interested in it in a way. I think over here, it's like terrifying, or it's not to be mixed, you know. And I remember growing up, I think as well, the thing I used to love is really politics and comedy. I used to think comedy is the last bastion for political free speech. But I noticed in Australia, there was like, the culture I grew up in was perfectly white. Like when I was in Sister She doing a lot of all those lots of comedy shows and stuff like that around the 5, 6, 7, that sort of time. I was absolutely on my own as a Black woman from Australia on any of those bills. But also it seemed like only white men could be political. There were political comics coming up a few years after me, like Fear of a Brown Planet, Nazim Hussain, Amar Rahman. But when they first arrived on the scene, people were terrified, and their audience was very much their own community.
Yeah.
And it took a while for everybody else, like the mainstream, and, you know, Amma might say it never happened, to come around and understand that if you're listening to Bill Hicks, if you're going to see, you know, all these different white comedians, I'd say from Will Anderson to Eddie Perfect, that are also talking politics, why can't you hear your politics from a person who's Black or brown or Asian? You know, this was something that I saw in comedy. You could only be
a man and a white man.
well, yeah, but also, like, if you were from a diverse background and you talked about race, people were like, oh, come on, you're still talking about that, you know, or and so it was all about perspective, you know, and I just had to sit there and lump, like, going, this is what's good, this is what's good. You know, people saying, telling me, go see Daniel thingy, or the other Daniel, or that Daniel, or, you know, the many marks or whatever. And I'd see them and I'd go, this isn't really for me, but I'm supposed to believe it's excellent because I'm being told, and this is what the dominant culture tell us, you know? So I feel like it took ages, and then, you know, getting back to Edinburgh, it was exciting seeing Desiree Birch, who is actually the voiceover on Too Hot to Handle, right? Seeing her show Unfuckable at Edinburgh, I was like, yes. I mean, this woman, she's even taller than me. People getting us confused. And I thought, this is exciting, right? I am now seeing a range of women of color killing it in Edinburgh. And there's sort of this sense, sort of like rap in Australia, where we finally see Sampa and Remy, you know, and Kate, and those guys push through because the talent's undeniable, but there's been a lot of work done to break that ground. Yeah. But I just feel like, I feel like comedy, particularly Melbourne Comedy Festival, is one of the last bastions of monoculture that needs to be twisted and broken and re-put together, dismantled in regard to comedy, right? There's a few more things happening in the screen space. Yeah. But still, when I worked at the ABC, we did this one day where all the women took over. Oh, it was called International Women's Day. And it dawned on me that there are just so many men that have just been handed TV shows. The many Toms, you know? And it sort of begets itself, this idea of, well, they're funny and they're the funniest and they're the best, and then they get the show. And I'm like, no, there's lots and lots of folks. There's lots and lots of folks who have paid their dues and are very funny, but you need to give them a shot and take a risk, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know the reason why I got into comedy, stand-up, was that I wanted to work on TV, and I just saw on TV it was all comedians, and generally white male comedians. Yes. That's who they were hiring for, hosting shows or, you know, have a TV show commissioned. And I was like, I've got to give this a go. And that's why I did it. And I was inspired by you because I saw your show in 2012. It was the Australian Booty.
Yes.
Yes. And I remember you standing there in your power talking about your heritage, because you're Chinese South African.
Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about your story about being a woman, which led me to go and get into comedy, to have someone lead the way again.
Yeah.
Tell their story. Can I ask, like, some of the stuff that you have talked about has been dark stuff, and particularly now we're in a pandemic and we had the Black Lives Matter, and you and I have talked about it because we did attempt a podcast that I ended up not doing. But why is comedy important, or how have you used comedy to talk about these issues?
Yeah, I think like anything, when something is the center, it needs to be in everything. So something like the idea of finally people beginning to understand that racism is structural and systemic, and we can enable it or we can disable it through what we put on the screen, through what we put on the stage. Like this is like this moment in time where people are going, oh, you know. So I feel like we need to hear that in music, we need to hear that in podcasts, we need to hear that on panels, we need to hear it in comedy.
Yeah.
And I think there's a mix of things going on that I really see. I kind of want to talk to every one of my acting students about this concept that they think it's a very narcissistic game, right? Like being the center of your brand, doing all of that stuff. But there's a huge power that starts to form. We've seen it from everything from movie stars to influencers, right? And with that following, with that leadership, you've got so many choices. Yeah, punching up, punching down. Like with children, teaching them how to be altruistic and kind versus individualistic and unkind. Comedy rests on Hannah Gadsby talks about it a lot in Nanette, but it rests on this really interesting seesaw. What we used to laugh at and what we're beginning to laugh at now and what we will laugh at in the future, I think is up for grabs. And that's a really good thing, because I was never laughing in the past because most of the jokes were on me or people in my community, women, fat women, black folks, queer folks, right? And of course, disabled folks, which I don't identify as disabled, but have many, many friends in that community. And they still fight the old guard on using the word retard, these bad, these words. I shouldn't say some of these words, but like now we're at a point where we have to work out what is truly funny and what connects people and what makes people laugh. And because I've been now in writers' rooms, I'm really thinking about structure and development and character development and joke structure and all that sort of stuff. And really, you can then be placed it anywhere. You could be a Muslim, you could have a sketch comedy show or a sitcom in a Muslim family set in Israel or in Palestine, and that could float, to a Vietnamese Australian family in Dandenong. You can set anything anywhere. The reason why we've seen so much monoculture, like so much sort of white families, white, etc., is because that's where the power has laid. Not because white people are more talented, white people's stories are more engaging, white people are more watchable or bankable. That's just something that, the industry came up with, and like any good structure, it serves a certain group, and that group is the powerful group. But I think if we look at Netflix and we look at what's happening around the world, we can see in online, people want good shit, and they want to see people from all different places now. Like I'm quite transfixed with I just want to see gay men. That's all I want to see right now. Like when I watch like 5 Dates or something on Netflix, the little docu-series about people, or 3 Dates or whatever it is, I'm sort of bored when I see the heteronormative sort of straight white couples or straight diverse couples. I want to see something else. And I'm always excited when I see pansexual or gay couples, because I just haven't seen enough. And I'm curious, and I've seen so much. I've seen so much from one particular culture and a group and a lens and a perspective. I think it's really wonderful to hear from everybody else for a while. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's a great thing that's happening right now.
I agree with you. I am interested in seeing different views and perspectives of life, of human interaction of people, and yeah, I feel like there's an evolution right now happening, especially with this pandemic. It's asking for us to think beyond the square that we've been accustomed to living.
And I think I've got to say the difference as well. Australia is very conservative, and it's not something that we think about much or we name much, but it's a very conservative culture.
Yeah.
So that's something we're pushing up against all the time as well. So whenever you feel like, but I think that's funny, and you get an executive going, we don't understand how to access it, it's because they haven't, they're not keeping up. You know, that's what I like to say to lots of people from diverse backgrounds. They're wrong.
Yeah.
The audience is ready and waiting and growing, and if you look at TikTok, all those kids, all those diverse kids out there, all those Aussies, those Filipino boys lip syncing, and those African girls, like, that's our audience.
Yeah, it is. It's I love TikTok because the whole world, the power that each person has with their phone, that's been the power.
Yeah.
We've had people messaging Kevin Hart's their favorite comedian, Lucy Ball. I think someone was asking her too. And we've had people from South Africa, Israel, Malaysia joining us. Thanks for joining us, guys, to talk about comedy. Now, Candy, this live is going on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and a lot of people ask me on LinkedIn, how do I use comedy? What would be your tip to someone who wanted to use comedy in their speaking to tell their story? What would be your tip?
Be yourself. Be yourself, but do a little bit of study. Find out how a joke, the anatomy of a joke. Like, I feel like I love improv and I like doing that, and I've done that for so long, but I'm also really excited by studying what really makes a joke work. Like, I liked in Australian Beauty, there was a joke that was 3 parts.
Mm-hmm.
And if I didn't, there were people that laughed on the first part, and the more people laughed on the second, or different people, and then on the third, everybody laughed together. Kind of understand that. Get out there and do a lot of, trials, which is interesting right now because you're going to sort of have to do it in a digital format. But probably one of the most harshest but biggest truths of comedy is you've got to die to fly.
Yes.
Bring on the death. With the death must come more open consciousness as opposed to victimhood, right? If you can just keep that victimhood at bay, you can probably do anything. Not to say that you can't use it in your comedy. Australia loves some self-deprecation, but you need to keep it at bay to keep clean with your craft. I know I've come from a big training background, studying acting and all that, but I do strongly believe in having a craft, not just something that is an extension of you, which means if you have a bad night, you think that you're worthless. And if you have a good night, you're the king of the world.
Yeah.
No. You should, for my money, if you want to keep in the game and you want to stay well, you have to be able to find a middle ground where whether the night goes well or not, the set goes well or not, you can come out and, sleep well that night. And I think that's one of the most difficult things to come to terms with and really work on. But, we've lost a lot of comics and a lot of actors and people that didn't grasp that and that put their entire worth, on the show, on the joke, on the following, on the audience. That is no way to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I like how you said there's the magic of 3, because in comedy there is a magic of 3. We love everything, and the 3 is a lucky number for a good joke. So That's a great tip. What's next for you? What's the next journey? What are you doing?
Look, I asked myself, is this where I live now? in a like online format. I'm working on a couple of new TV developments, Dirty 30s, that's getting pitched out, and The Back Room, a lesbian rom-com set in the back room of a brothel. As I said, I've got like funny and sexy glued to my forehead at the moment, which is nice, being a bit of a hired gun for those things. I've got my own, obviously, short form series that I'm working on, King Shit and Ladybug, which we've just had to postpone due to the COVID, which is tough. Working on a feature and just trying to work out what my modus operandi is to survive this pandemic. But hopefully, I mean, I hope to come out with a couple of good shorts and solid collaborations. My time in LA meant I had really good connections with some people that I think are brilliant up and coming folks, but nothing I can really talk too much about. But I did connect strongly with Madeline Perry, who directed Nanette. So we're always boiling some things in the background. But, you know, more and more stuff for screen, short form, long form, TV, feature.
Yeah. No, amazing. You are a force, Candy Bowers. Love your work. And I love your heart in your work. So
Thank you.
It's not just comedy, but what did you say before? Sexy and funny, wasn't it?
Yeah. And heartful, sexy, funny.
Oh, yes. Such a good one.
That's the name of my title. Yeah.
Candy, thank you so much for coming on the show to talk about comedy and talking about your work. I love your work so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the SnortCast. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Please go check out Candy, her work, and we will all see you next time. See you guys. Thanks for joining.
See ya.
Thank you. Oh, before we leave, I just need to show one more video. Here we go.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.